I did stuff that doesn't work because doing more exercise isn't good. It's doing the right amount and right intensity at the right time. That's going to get you most of the way. But the real secret behind smarter, not harder is something that I call in the book slope of the curve biology. Your body doesn't respond to how much work you did. It responds to how quickly you had to do it and how quickly you returned to a normal baseline.
Well, hi, everybody. Dr. David Perlmutter here. You know, we work really hard to achieve our health-related goals, our functionality, and it is perhaps something we should consider that maybe we should work smarter and not harder. In fact, that's the title of Dave Asprey's new book, Smarter, Not Harder. And what Dave Asprey has done is looked at a series of what he calls biohacks. We're all familiar with the term. I think he may have coined that term. That really allow us with perhaps less effort to achieve metabolic health, neurological health, and even modify the expression of our DNA, our genome, through changes in what's called the epigenome by engaging in what he calls various types of hacks. Let me tell you a little bit more about Dave Asprey. Dave Asprey is known as the father of biohacking. He's a four-time New York Times best-selling science and nutrition author. He's a renowned tech innovator and the award-winning entrepreneur behind countless health and wellness companies, including Bulletproof. Excited to delve into Dave Asprey's new book, so let's get started. Well, welcome, Dave Asprey. How in the world are you doing?
I am doing fantastic, David. I always love getting a chance to talk with you because you've got so much great brain stuff that anytime you have a new book, anytime there's something going on, I always look at what you're doing because it matters.
Well, thank you. You wrote a new book, Harder, Not Smarter. You know, we think that the harder we push, the more gain we're going to get. And, you know, you come to a conclusion in your book that that's not natural. That's not what nature wants us to do. And you make a big push for us to be you know, to tap into what you call the power of laziness. So how do we get there? And how does a guy like me embrace this notion that I need to back down a little bit?
Well, we're wired to save energy, and cell biology supports this. Our bodies, before we can think about something, they want you to lay on the couch and they want you to not use more calories than is necessary. So you have an inherent drive to do that. And what we do is we feel guilty that, oh, you know, I didn't want to go to the gym today. Something must be wrong with me. Why can't I just want to do things that my body is wired to not want to do? And the idea behind Smarter, Not Harder is that, look, we believe that if something's good, more is better. So if you're going to work out, just do it every day and then magic will happen. I did this when I weighed 300 pounds. I went to the gym 6 days a week, 90 minutes at a time, and I did it for 18 months straight. At the end of that, I still weighed 300 pounds. I was stronger, but I didn't lose the weight and I wasn't healthier. I was just stronger. And I spent 702 hours of my life doing that. I did the math and I didn't get the results. So most of us today are feeling guilty that we're not exercising as much as we should and we're not getting the results. So I went in with what I've done at my company, Upgrade Labs, and we looked at the data and we looked at the idea that getting a signal to cause your body to change is a small amount of work, and just hammering out a lot of reps, going and sweating for an hour in a spin class, we think it's good for us. We might even get an endorphin high from it, but it doesn't create the results you want to get. David, you've known me for a long time. I'm 7.2% body fat right now, and I'm doing what's in the book. It turns out that your body responds not to how much work you do, but it's how quickly you can turn on the work. And most importantly, how quickly you turn off the work and return to baseline. So to cause your body to change, the deal is to get yourself enough input, enough work to get right to the edge of losing equilibrium and then to recover really quickly. And the body says, oh, I can do that. And then it moves up your level. What this means is you can get better results in a very carefully created 5 minutes of cardio than you get in an hour of cardio. And there's 2 university studies backing that up. And the same goes with weights. Picking up weights a whole bunch isn't the most effective way to do it. And so we harness our power of laziness by saying, I am going to use my inherent desire to save time and energy. And I'm going to use that as my motivation and say, today, my workout only took 5 minutes or 10 minutes, but I got more results. It's highly motivating to do that. The reason it's motivating is the same reason. You ever go shoe shopping with Lee's? And oh, look, I saved $400 on these shoes. No, you actually spent $500 on the shoes, but we focus on the savings. So to motivate yourself, what you do is you focus on how much time you're saving in a workout, not on how much work you did. Trying to motivate yourself with something your body doesn't want isn't very good. So when I go to work, I say, all right, I'm going to put in 10 minutes and I'm going to get an hour's worth of value. I saved 50 minutes. And you can go to an Upgrade Labs. But in the book, I think most people don't have a franchise near them that has all this AI driven tech. But what you can do is you can say, if I'm going to put on muscle, what are the 4 or 5 different ways that might work better than just picking up rocks, which is what we've always done? If I'm going to do cardio, I could just, go for a long jog. 80% of people who do that get injured in the first year, so it might not work very well. Or I could figure out, how do I get that signal in? And it turns out the most effective signal we found so far is 20 seconds of work over the course of 5 minutes. And that is driven by artificial intelligence. But in the book, I teach you, hey, what would happen if instead of doing this kind of unpleasant slog, what if I just had a few spikes, different than high intensity interval training? And if you get more results from that, you know what? I saved 45 minutes of time today and I got at least as many benefits as the painful thing. And that's motivating to me. But the idea, I'm going to wake up today, I'm going to be a good person, I'm going to write a goal to do an hour of exercise like everyone does in January, and then no one ever does it because your body doesn't want you to. So I'm working with the body, not against it.
Well, it's interesting that you put forward this idea on the heels of a blog that I just posted yesterday that was a review of a study that just came out showing that individuals who engage in 2 to 3 minutes of high intensity activity, I didn't say the word exercise, a day,
Yes.
have more than a 40% risk reduction of all-cause mortality and close to 50% risk reduction in cardiovascular mortality during the course of this study. They had people wearing wearable devices, accelerometers, et cetera. And I think that, that challenges a lot of us who think that more is better. But that said, I was kind of geared up to be very challenging towards you today with this thesis because it does, it certainly rocks us. It certainly challenges us who think that we need to spend time engaged in the amount of time on the Precor or running, et cetera, and how much weight we lift, that more is better. But this is an interesting study. And I would say that all in all, it's certainly very supportive of your thesis that very short bursts of high intensity exercise can offer up some pretty salubrious outcomes. That said, let me go back to what you were talking about earlier. When you weighed 300 pounds and you put in your total of 780 hours in total, what was your diet like back then?
Well, I was back then doing a low fat diet, and I was doing my best to get more protein. So I was eating typically chicken breasts. I wasn't, obviously, you can't do low carb and low fat at the same time very much. That's not particularly possible. So I was not eating a lot of junk. I was limiting my calories as much as I could. I remember during that time, I was at a Carl's Jr. with a group of my friends. And this is my early 20s. So, you have lots of energy at that time. And I looked around at all of my thin friends, and they were eating double Western bacon cheeseburgers. And I had the chicken salad with no dressing. Oh, and no chicken because I had too many. How do I minimize the calories? And I thought to myself, oh, I work out more than all my friends combined. And I eat less than all of them. And I'm the biggest person in the room. And I'm a size 46-inch waist. And I just thought, well, maybe I'm eating still too much, right? So we have this idea, eating less is supposed to be better, working out more is better. The reality is that that was not the right diet for me because I wasn't, for instance, gluten-free or dairy-free, and both of those are triggers for me. I also had issues with toxic mold in my home, which creates lots of estrogen. So there were environmental factors, there were dietary factors, but most people would say if you cut your calories and you cut your fat and you work out a lot, calories in, calories out. I did it so religiously And I just couldn't get the results. And I was desperate. I'd had 2 knee surgeries. I said, I'm never going to have another knee surgery. I'm just going to work out till I'm so strong. And the first time I did any kind of activity that risked my knee after all that, I blew it out, had to have a 3rd surgery. And I was
Oh,
just so
gosh.
frustrated. And I felt kind of almost hopeless, where God, I did everything. And it was this realization, I did stuff that doesn't work, because doing more exercise isn't good. It's doing the right amount and right intensity at the right time. That's going to get you most of the way. But the real secret behind smarter, not harder, is something that I call in the book slope of the curve biology. Your body doesn't respond to how much work you did. It responds to how quickly you had to do it and how quickly you returned to normal baseline. So what a real workout looks like for someone who wants to get all the savings is, okay, I turned it on all the way, and wow, that was really intense. I thought I was going to die for 10 seconds. You can do that, right? And then immediately, as fast as you can, you return to normal heart rate, normal recovery, and you relax. And the body goes, aha, I have the capacity to do this, and I can be recovered. Therefore, I'm able to do it. So then it moves your set point up. It moves your set point up. This saves you so much time. I don't particularly have 8 to 10 hours a week to exercise. I'm a dad. We're both New York Times authors. You know how much work that is, and the podcast and other large companies that I started and run. So how do I do that and still take care of myself? I don't have the 8 to 10 hours. Most humans don't right now. And what we do have, though, is, do you have an hour spread out in 3 20-minute chunks? That's more than enough to get yourself into I got most of it done. Look, what I'm talking about isn't going to give you a polished tricep and like, there's all kinds of stuff you can do if you're a bodybuilder. But most of us, we just wanted our time and our energy back, and we want to look pretty good. And you can do that in less than an hour a week, and it's not painful. And the time you save, you can celebrate. And that's the motivation. The big carrot in front of you is, I saved 6 hours this week and I still got the stuff my body needed. That motivates the heck out of me.
And what is the metric that you use when you say you got your body, you got the results that you were looking for? What's the metric?
The most important metric is when you wake up in the morning, your body doesn't hurt, and you feel full of energy. I did not have this in my 20s. I did not have this in my 30s. And I do now. Another metric, and I don't use the scale. The scale isn't very valuable. You can basically go to the bathroom and move the scale a pound or two. It's just on a daily basis, it's not useful. So at Upgrade Labs, and by the way, own and upgradelabs.com. It's a franchise. They're opening across the country now. People are signing up for these. And at Upgrade Labs, we have when you check in, there's a $26,000 device that uses medical grade technology to look at where the fat is on your body, what percentage of muscle mass do you have fat around your organs and things like that. And I have exceptionally low liver fat, like 0.63%, very, very low. And so, but you look in the mirror, and I can pick up my shirt anytime without dehydrating, and I have abs, and I've never looked this good in my life, and I'm spending very little time exercising. And of course I eat right, but even eating right, it's about, okay, how do I get a signal into my body to make it burn fat, to make it put on muscle? And it turns out it's not as hard as people think. And some of that is timing, and some of that is composition of the food. And you and I both know, if you're eating obesogens and inflammatory toxins all the time, it's harder. Even if you're doing that stuff and you're not going to stop because you love your Pop-Tarts, the kind of exercise that I'm talking about, the kind that was in that study, it actually makes a difference. In fact, another study, David, that you might have come across showed that 5 seconds of intense exercise a day was making a difference in people's strength. They had people doing nothing, and they would literally do an isometric squeeze for 5 seconds a day, and they found a 12% strength increase in these people after a week or two. So what we're finding is, turn it on quick. We're finding turn it on quickly, turn it off quickly, and we never pay attention to turning it off. This is the recovery part of it. And you see these Just Do It, these pro athletes that are out there. I work with these guys because of the things I've done with collagen and with coffee and just all of the performance things. So I get to talk to them, and all they do is eat and sleep and recover, and then do their exercise, right? So they focus so much on recovery. But you and me, if we're doing our normal life, we don't get to recover like a pro athlete. And if we try to train like one, it doesn't work. And even the pros are figuring out, if I run less, I'm faster in a marathon, because they're getting the right signal into the body. And this whole book is, well, okay, what signal do we have that's better than picking up rocks and running away from tigers? Because those work, but they're so inefficient and we just don't have time.
Well, you spend a lot of time in the book talking about energy. You know how, I mean, that everybody's complaining that they don't have energy, and every um, supplement, et cetera, that's tried to be portrayed in advertising is, I took this and I have more energy than ever. So you have 6 steps, and the first one is to reduce friction. Now, I know from a physics perspective, things move better when we reduce friction, but I think it's a bit of a metaphor, obviously. What do you mean reduce friction as it relates to our bodies?
Well, there's a lot of things that slow you down, that make things feel harder than they should be. And an example is making it inconvenient for you to work out or to do anything that improves yourself. And when you realize you can make it convenient because it takes far less time, suddenly the motivation required to do something is very, very low, versus, oh my gosh, I have to get dressed, I have to put on my stretchy pants, I've got to drive to the spin class, I've got to go in, there's going to find a thing and see how sweaty it is, and all the unpleasant things that we all do, all those stack up in our subconscious. And then when it's time to go, I just don't feel like it. In fact, the Instagram looks really good right now. And then you just don't go. And everyone listening has done this, including me. And well, when the friction's gone, because there isn't resistance, because it's an easy thing to do, it was a very brief thing, that matters a lot. And there are things that slow your energy down, things that inhibit your cell's ability to make electricity. And we've got to remove those from the diet. And David, you make great supplements. You're a master of this, and we both believe the same general set of things, probably 90% overlap on what's helping people's cells. But a cell that's trying to make energy, but you're giving it heavy metals, you're giving it grains, which have lectins and, very importantly, phytic acid. Suddenly, wow, you're just, everything feels hard, and it feels hard because of this friction you've created in the ability to make electricity, and the friction you've created in your belief systems about how much work it's going to be to get your results.
Well, you mentioned phytic acid being an issue, and yet a lot of people are talking about the value of nuts and seeds and grains. And your book talks about these as being high sources of phytic acid. So we should avoid them, these types of foods that many are recommending.
Grains, unless you're starving, and grains are great if you're starving because they keep you alive. In terms of keeping minerals in your tissues, no, you don't want to be eating grains. And the big problem here is that we need enough minerals in order for our cells to make electricity, for them to fold proteins, to make collagen, to do all the aspects of life. And plants protect themselves via several different mechanisms, like lectins, which have become well known. But phytic acid is maybe more important than lectins for all of us, because it's what plants put in them. So that if we eat a plant, the phytic acid sticks to minerals like zinc and calcium in our body, and it pulls them out of our bones. So when you decide you're going to go plant-based and you're eating all of these nuts and seeds, then the phytic acid in those pulls minerals out. And you could say, but it says right there on the package that there's 12 milligrams of zinc in my whatever. Yeah, if it comes with phytic acid, it doesn't matter if there's zinc. And even if you took a zinc supplement and you have a lot of phytic acid, it won't work. So the answer is, well, don't eat as many foods with phytic acid. If you're going to eat nuts, and I'm not opposed to nuts, but you need to eat smaller amounts of them because of the bad fats in them. And you should soak or sprout them first. And the idea that I used to have, 15 years ago, I'll just eat 2 handfuls of nuts a day because they've got good fats. It's probably not borne out in the research, but a tablespoon or 2 of nuts is fine. You just can't live on a ton of nuts because they will deplete your minerals. Oh, and all the foods that you think have minerals, they probably don't, because our soil doesn't have minerals anymore. We've been farming on it for 100 years. They don't replace minerals unless there's grass-fed animals that are pooping on the soil and then we have regenerative agriculture. And you've been to my farm, David. You know that I'm actually doing this. And you've even eaten some of the stuff that's grown on my farm, and it
We
tastes
have,
different.
and it was delicious, I have to say. I hope we can repeat that pretty soon in this upcoming summer. In the phytic acid discussion in your book, you talk about sourdough bread. And how did sourdough bread make the eat list?
Well, I still think wheat is a limited issue. Like, you do not want to be eating a lot of wheat. If you're going to be eating bread, though, sourdough is by far superior, because when you ferment the grains, and you can make sourdough that's gluten-free as well, when you ferment the grains, the bacteria break down the phytic acid. So when you go back to traditional food, even if you were eating corn or grains, or even something like quinoa, it was always fermented or treated very specifically, sometimes for several days before you would put it in your body, because our ancestors figured this out and then we forgot it. People don't know. You eat a rice cake, yes, it'll spike your blood sugar, but it'll also have a huge amount of phytic acid. So processing of our grains is a major issue. I think people are better off when they just don't eat grains at all, and you get your carbohydrates from other sources like tubers. It's just a much safer approach for longevity. But in the meantime, if you're going to choose between white bread, or even worse, whole wheat bread, or you're going to get, say, fermented sourdough, you're always going to be better off with real sourdough.
You cover oxalic acid as well, and in the context of things like rhubarb, kale, spinach, indicating that those are strongly considered to be health foods, and yet you are arguing against them.
Yes. Well, oxalic acid is a major defense molecule in plants, so that bugs and animals don't eat very many of them. Even the pigs on my organic farm, they'll leave the spinach and kale to last, and they'll push it out of the way to get to the other foods. You can try and give a piece of rhubarb to a horse. The horse will spit it out. Unless it's a really dumb horse, it'll eat it and get kidney stones. What oxalic acid does in the body is it enters the stomach, then it crosses, it pokes holes in the lining of your gut because it's pretty abrasive that way. It enters your blood and it finds calcium. And when it finds calcium, oxalic acid and calcium bind to make tiny razor sharp crystals. And these can cause gout, and gout not in the drop acid way, but in the oxalic acid gout, and kidney stones and other conditions, systemic inflammation, and even something called vulvodynia, where oxalic acid crystals form in the vulva in women. And these are really uncomfortable conditions. The number of people getting kidney stones from these kale smoothies and spinach smoothies, even from excess almonds, it's very meaningful. And we keep telling ourselves they're healthy. Our grandparents would have taken their spinach. They would not eat it raw, because that would be crazy, where the levels are highest. They would boil the spinach, dump the water. Then they would mix in milk or cream or cheese, because the calcium sticks to the oxalic acid before you eat it. So then at least you can poop it out instead of really having it shred the inside of your body. So throw away the spinach salad. If you love spinach and you don't have problems with kidney stones or gout, cook your spinach already, dump the water, which is going to contain a lot of the oxalic acid, and have some calcium either in the water, or just have some dairy with it if you tolerate dairy. And magically, your cellular energy production improves and your body doesn't hurt anymore.
I'm glad you mentioned that about the oxalic acid vulvodynia connection. A lot of women don't know that. There is, a pretty large segment of women who do experience vulvodynia, pain in the vulva. And, I'm not going to say that reducing oxalic acid is necessarily going to help everybody,
It won't.
but there are plenty of reports dating back to some British literature that indicate that, a meaningful percentage of women will have a significant improvement upon adopting a low oxalate type of diet like you've just described. And you also mentioned nightshades, which I think was a really valuable thing to revisit the nightshades. Things like eggplant, white potato, etc., tomato, tobacco, who knew? And you decided to add that in the book. What provoked you?
Well, when I wrote my first big diet book 10 years ago, and in the first chapter, I had like oxalic acid, phytic acid, lectins, which is what we're talking about now. These are major issues for broad swaths of people. So I had some friends over last night and they brought white potatoes. My son and I have the genes where if we eat the nightshade family, we get systemic pain, our energy production goes down, and it lasts for a long time. My daughter does not have that gene. She can eat the potatoes, she ate them and loved them. And my son and I said, no thanks, because it's not worth the pain. But if you don't know about this, and around a third of people have issues with this, and you're trying to lose weight, you're trying to exercise, and then you come home and say, oh, I'm going to eat some cayenne pepper because I hear it's good for inflammation. This is what I used to do. And plus I like cayenne. Well, that stuff absolutely causes pain all up and down my spine, and my knees creak again like they did when I was a teenager. I had arthritis diagnosed when I was 14. So what I'm looking to do in this book and say, well, these are friction points. If you're doing this, even if you do everything else right, this is a major inhibitor of your progress. So I suggest that people cut down on things that raise oxalic acid to high levels because it's not good for anyone. You can still have some, but you got to find your level. And then with other people, we end up saying, all right, it's maybe it's more of a phytic acid thing. You don't feel a high phytic acid meal. But when I was a raw vegan getting massive amounts of phytic acid, I actually cracked 2 teeth and I had to have them replaced because I leached minerals out of my body. And it took me about 2.5 years of eating the bulletproof diet, which is very high in minerals, to do it. And it's why Danger Coffee, my new coffee company, we have minerals added back into the coffee, more than 50 different trace minerals. They're not in your food, they're not in your soil, and the modern diet is sucking minerals out of your body. And since at the very lowest level, to make collagen, you have to have minerals. To do any biological process, we use small amounts of minerals. And if they're not there, I don't care how much exercise you do. I don't care if you do it exactly with the right signal. If you don't have the building blocks, your body won't do what you want. So I want to set people up to say, you just did this one little thing that told your body to grow. Oh, and the body had what it needed to grow. And magically, then you can grow a muscle.
We've talked a lot about the value of fermented foods from a microbiome perspective. You raised some concerns that things like sauerkraut and pickles, etc., might be high sources of histamine, and that might be challenging for a lot of people.
Especially post-COVID, it seems like there's more allergies, more sensitivity to histamine than I've ever seen. And some people have a genetic issue, some people it's a gut bacteria issue. But if you find you occasionally get hives, you get flushing, you get tired after meals, there's a lot of reasons that that can be. But one of the overlooked ones is higher histamine foods. So it's amazing that 2-day-old leftovers might make you tired, but fresh food, the same food, doesn't make you tired. And that's a major learning. And this is caused by histamine. So fermented foods may be really good for you, and I recommend them. But if you eat a fermented food and you get really tired or nauseous or flushed, or maybe even get hives, that specific ferment wasn't done right, or you're very sensitive to it. I used to try and load myself with fermented foods when I did have histamine issues. And I would just keep doing it, and I was tired all the time. And when I realized, oh, that sauerkraut messes me up, but that other one is delicious, maybe it wasn't me. Maybe it was the difference between the sauerkrauts. So I urge caution with fermented foods, but they're good for you. Just all of them may not be good for exactly you.
There's a big push these days to, for multiple reasons, to restrict or reduce our consumption of animal products, specifically meat, in favor, seemingly, of these plant-based burgers, which originally, when they were first introduced into the market, took stock values went through the roof, et cetera. But it looks as if that has been played out a bit. And you are not a huge proponent of the plant-based burgers that were at least at one point, very popular.
Apparently, it's not just me because no one's buying them. If you see pictures before a hurricane of the grocery store, it's stripped bare except for the plant-based burgers. No one touches those, even when they're buying
And
survival.
I know what I've seen the grocery stores before the hurricane, having just gone through one.
So our bodies know that that's not food, and the marketing is all about, oh, it tastes just like. But look, if I made a bag of cyanide taste just like a burger, you wouldn't eat it. It doesn't matter what it tastes like. It matters what it does to your body and then what it tastes like. And plant-based foods have inferior proteins that you cannot absorb. They're higher in phytic acid, depending on which one you're talking about. And they're highly processed food products with canola oil instead of the things that are in animals. I believe after having been a vegan, having been a raw vegan, having experimented extensively and extremely with all these different diets to see what they're doing, that humans do not thrive on highly processed plant-based burgers. But when you can sell one for $6, big food thrives. And there's been an organized campaign to convince you to eat foods that make you weak, which sells more pharmaceuticals. It's just straight up that way. This is the best business model ever, and it was pioneered
Right.
by the diet soda manufacturers. Let me sell you a product that makes you fat and tell you it makes you lose weight, so you'll keep using it forever in a feeble attempt to lose weight. You stop drinking the diet sodas, it's easier to lose weight. Well, plant-based burgers, they tell you it's healthy to lose weight. It actually makes you fatter and more tired, so then maybe you'll go even more plant-based. I call that the vegan trap, and I fell for it. I absolutely did. And I did lose some weight at first, but I got weak and I got autoimmune conditions. And this is what happens when people go plant-based. I like eating plants. They need to be the plants that are compatible with you, that don't cause inflammation. Maybe nightshades and cayenne and potatoes are on your menu. Maybe they're not. But just because a plant made it, it's not anywhere near as healthy or as good for you as what an animal makes. Animal protein and animal fats have been prized by every culture throughout all of history as the most superior foods. And the data on protein availability, amino acid availability, and on fatty acid composition, animal products are important. But as a guy who cares about the planet and I care about animals, if we do not have grass-fed regenerative agriculture, we will have even less minerals in our soil. So to eat your carrots, you need to have animal poop somewhere in the world. And going for a world of plant-based burgers where we have monocrops, where there's no life in the field except for these plants on damaged soil, and there's no bunnies, there's no turtles. We took away their homes, or we just crushed them with tractors. It is not death free. In fact, there's more deaths per calorie in a vegan burger than there is in a grass fed burger, because one cow will feed you for a whole year.
You mentioned in these burgers that they often use canola oil, and you did a bit of a deep dive in your book on the omega sixes in general. So let's open that up a little bit.
Okay.
What's gone on in our society with respect to our oil, our fat consumption, omega 3 versus omega 6? And then if you can close, we'll talk about the remedy for that.
Got it. Well, historically, if you remember an economics class from middle school, there's a famous graph on supply and demand, and it's guns and butter. And a lot of people know that analogy. They say, okay, if a government can invest in guns or butter, the more they invest, the price goes down and things like that. But why would they choose butter and guns? Well, guns for national defense and national stuff, whatever. But butter, why butter? Why not something else? Because saturated fat from butter is actually pro-metabolic, and it has been in our supply, in our food supply, everywhere on the planet. And we've replaced it over the past, about 30, 40 years with incredible amounts of highly processed oils that we couldn't even get as humans. Canola oil is also known as rapeseed oil. You can't eat it until it's been highly processed. And when you eat it, it enters your cell membranes. And I wrote in one of my books a study that shows how your white fat accumulates that most quickly. And when you have too much omega 6, it makes free radicals and inflammation throughout the body. So most people, when you measure what's in their fat, they have fat that's primarily corn oil and soybean oil. And that makes for cells that cannot make full energy and that don't function very well. And it's a direct contributor to diabetes and cancer and Alzheimer's disease, most likely Alzheimer's anyway. I don't have a direct connection there, but metabolically, it all lines up. So what would happen if we went back to the way we always ate? Just look at any movie from the 70s. They'll do a scene of a beach. Where are all the obese people? There aren't any. And those people were not all health freaks in the 70s. What was going on is they ate saturated fat. French fries at McDonald's were cooked in tallow, not soybean oil. And tallow is beef fat. So we do better on saturated fat, and we need some omega 6, but not very much. And we need some omega 3 from fish, not plant-based omega 3s, because plant-based omega 3s do not convert into the kind that we need for our brains, which are the omega 3 forms of EPA and DHA. So basically, eat fish once or twice a week and eat some grass-fed animals when you need your protein, or eggs if you tolerate them. Have some dairy protein if you tolerate it, and that's highly variable for people, and make that grass-fed as well. And magically, everything is easier because you got your energy back. And if you try to say, oh, I'm going to eat almond milk and I'm going to eat a soy burger, I promise you, do that for 3 years and look in the mirror and do any measure of metabolic function. It will go down. This is how you make people weak and infertile.
You asked the question in your book, are we drinking the wrong kind of milk?
Oh, yeah. We are drinking the wrong kind of milk because industry is all about producing something at high volume, low cost that tastes good. And that's how they think about it. The way I think about the world is, how do I produce something that makes you feel amazing first and tastes good second? And when you do that, you go, oh, what would I do with cows? We've used almost exclusively cows that can eat soy and corn, which means that their milk is full of soybean oil and corn oil, and it's not built right. And those cows make a type of protein called A1 protein that causes allergic problems and inflammation in many people. But if you feed cows grass, a different species of cows, they make a kind of protein called A2 protein. And this, over the last 10 years, I've been talking about this. It's in my books. You've talked about this as well. And what's happening now is you can go to most grocery stores in big cities and they'll actually have an A2 milk. And surprisingly, people can drink those. Milk protein from an A2 cow, if you're not allergic, is a great source of protein. Milk protein from an A1 cow is a bad source of protein that's probably going to cause problems in you.
Beta-casomorphin 7 apparently is the big issue. So, but there's plenty of people who would say, "My gosh, why would I be drinking whole milk with saturated fat? Why would I be consuming saturated fat anyway?" With all of the reams of data indicating that saturated fat is going to make my children born naked, and I'll have all these devastating effects on my health. The reality is, let's look at the data, and that humans have been consuming saturated fat for as long as we've walked the planet. And now suddenly, the downstream effect of Ansel Keys is that all fat is bad and saturated fat is the worst. Matter of fact, that's not what the science has been telling us ever. And we really got off
No.
on the wrong foot. You mentioned DHA and EPA. There are, as it relates to DHA, there is a plant-derived DHA for people who want to remain vegetarian.
From algae, right?
Pardon me?
From algae, right?
Right. And any thoughts on that?
It seems like it works. When you get really deep into it, the structure of the carbon atoms, there's something called SN2, which is something that you get from animal-based, particularly krill oil is my favorite source for that, or fish egg oil, like herring egg oil, or you could just eat salmon eggs at a sushi place. Those types are provably better than processed fish oil or the plant-based stuff. So it's a small arrangement of carbon atoms, but honestly, in the overall scheme of things, if you are, for whatever reason, wanting to eat something that's processed from algae instead of something that comes from a renewable resource like krill, you can do that and it'll probably work well enough.
I think that moving forward, we're going to learn more, not just about docosahexaenoic acid, but docosapentaenoic acid. In other words, where a difference of one carbon atom as a storage form and as a resource for the body to tap into to have available moving forward DHA. When you talk a lot about supplements, and how many are you taking a day right now, by the way?
Oh, probably 80-ish, something like that.
80-ish. Okay, that's a lot, but you look great. That said, you lead off with the fat solubles, A, D, E, and K. Is there a reason? Did you feel those are most important, or?
Yeah. You and I, David, are both, we want to help lots of people, and neither one of us wants people to spend even $1 or a minute that they don't need to spend, because it's in my world, it's out of integrity to tell someone to do something that isn't going to help them. And when I look at what are we missing the most of? If you wanted everything you do to improve yourself to work better, there's only two things. One is minerals, and the other one is the fat soluble vitamins. And when we get minerals into our tissues, and not just your bones, minerals are in every cell in your body. When you can get those in, then you can respond better to any kind of work you do in the world. You feel better all the time. Your energy turns back online. But if you take minerals and you're low on your fat soluble vitamins, the minerals won't enter. If you take minerals and you're eating a lot of phytic acid, the minerals won't enter. So if we could just get everyone to take vitamin DAKE, that's DAKE, if you took those and you took minerals, that's going to help the most people. And these are the daily things we're all missing. So I don't care if you take all the cool smart drugs like I do, and you do all the esoteric anti-aging supplements like I do. If you're low on DAKE and minerals, the other stuff can't work. So I wanted foundational stuff. And this is reaching epidemic levels. Let's just get our kids to have minerals back so their bone density is high. Let's get their connective tissues built. And the studies on vitamin D and having adequate testosterone, they're out there. And right now we have an epidemic of young men who have testosterone levels of their grandfathers when they were their age. So our species fertility and power in the world is declining. Minerals and fat soluble vitamins are a major part of getting it back. We also should cut down the toxins in the world. And I mentioned that in the book. But the big thing is let's get that signal in to cause the body to do what you want in the least possible time.
I think importantly, we call them supplements, and meaning that they're designed to supplement what we should get from our diets. We're not going to get these from our diets. Let's be
Yeah.
real.
Yeah.
The minerals that should appear in our vegetables are not present in the soil. There's no way they're magically going to appear in even organically grown from California. You know, plants are designed to take in minerals for their own sustenance. And as such, they have mechanisms that'll take in a lot of other things, even though you're led to believe that that soil is organic. There's a lot of stuff that plants can take in that can be threatening. So, face it, the food availability that we have, even organic, is worrisome. And I think the notion of supplementation makes a lot of sense. Many would argue with it, but uh, you'd ask, what have I chosen for myself? And it is supplementation, not to the degree that you engage, but I'm very much wedded to the notion of supplementation and optimizing
Yeah.
various parameters that I measure in terms of outcome. Let's turn our attention to the brain. I mean, I think it's one of your three major topics of the book, and that is maintaining and perhaps enhancing brain function. And you start off that chapter looking at neurofeedback, and it seems as if people have ways now of availing themselves of neurofeedback without breaking the bank, and in a pretty straightforward, easy biohack that's available to them.
It's true. And what I'm looking at here is that same lens of how do we make it smarter, not harder? And that's why I called the book that. Well, you could say, all right, I want to improve my brain. So I'm going to sit in a cave for the next 20 years and cross my legs and meditate. This is how we used to do it. And then in the modern world, well, I'll just commit to doing an hour of meditation a day. And usually by the third week of January, that goes away because that was our New Year's commitment to ourselves. Okay, what if there was a way to get an hour of meditation in a half hour? Would you do it? Yeah. Could you celebrate the half hour savings, knowing that your body cares more about the time you saved than the time you spent? You could do that. And I go through in the book for muscles, for weight loss, for stress management, and for cognitive enhancement. What are the technologies and techniques available now that science shows work better than the way you think you're supposed to do it? And I am a fan of meditation. I've done breath work every day for 5 years. I've meditated. I've traveled around the world and learned meditation from the masters in the Himalayas and the Andes. So I'm in on that. I also know that if I don't have an hour a day and I wanted to reach that state, how could you do it? And neurofeedback is a way that's been very profoundly effective for me. Breath work plus meditation works better than just meditation, though. There's a savings there. You can use light and sound glasses that will put your brain in a state that might have taken you a long time to get into, but you can do it more quickly. We even run small amounts of electrical current across your ears. One of my companies is called 40 Years of Zen, and we have a 5-day intensive neurofeedback program that is for executives and pro athletes and people like that. And that's not something that most people are going to do at home. But there are now over the counter things you can buy for a few $100s that give you basic neurofeedback at home. And what's happening now is, okay, if you were going to invest an hour of time on improving yourself today, you could say, I'm going to spend an hour meditating or an hour in a spin class. Or you could do the sort of thing that's at my Upgrade Labs franchise and say, well, I'm going to take this hour and I'm going to invest it for the biggest returns ever. And I'm going to spend 20 minutes doing something with technology that helps my brain. Any of the things we talked about, home neurofeedback, light sound goggles, all of the stuff. You do that. Oh, I still have 40 minutes left. And then you do something else.
What about the Muse device? You actually mentioned that in your book.
Yeah, Muse is now the largest data set of electricity from the brain. You're getting some signals from the front of the brain. It's not the same as gluing electrodes to your head and going to a neurologist. I mean, as you well know. But if you were going to meditate by yourself, alone in the dark, or you put a headset on that played a sound when your meditation was better, you would be able to guide your meditation in the right direction. And that's what Muse does. And it's a few $100s. So all of a sudden, okay, if my goal is to improve myself, I'm going to invest this much time. I might as well have the stuff that makes this time valuable instead of just making it harder. And we believe, I think because of the Puritans who founded the country, that some amount of suffering is required for improvement. I'm not convinced of that. Sometimes you have to work hard, but it's more about just getting to the edge of suffering very quickly and then stopping and then just and chilling. So you could, for instance, do one of the types of very efficient short exercise I'm talking about, and then put on a neurofeedback system like Muse, like the clinical stuff we're doing at Upgrade Labs, and then use that to program yourself to return to this blissful, calm state. And then the body goes, wait a minute, I thought I was about to die because you made me go fast for 10 seconds, but then I went into bliss. You know what? I think I can handle that. And once the body knows it can handle something, it will adjust your hardware to make it able to handle that. But if instead, say, I'm just going to go hard, and you blow yourself out and you go beyond that, it might take you a couple of days to recover. It's the long recovery that stopped progress. So I'm teaching people in Smarter Not Harder how to push yourself very briefly right to the edge, and then how to use technologies or techniques or methods to just recover really fast so you feel like yourself again. And it's that recovery that tells the body it's okay to get stronger. It's okay to get younger. It's okay to get smarter. And the body will do that. It wants to do those things.
What about polyvagal therapy?
This is one of my favorite things. I interviewed Dr. Stephen Porges on my show a couple times, and they call him the father of polyvagal theory. The vagus nerve, it's the largest nerve in the body, and it innervates pretty much everything, but especially your fight or flight response, your organs, your rest, your digest. And you can now train and stimulate your vagal nerve in ways that were entirely unheard of 10 or 20 years ago. And one of the things you can do at home is get a little device that tickles the vagal nerve with the electricity in your left ear. There's also vibrating devices that go on your sternum or your wrists that actually, in studies, cause this major nerve that's responsible for your ability to go into rest and relax mode. It makes the nerve stronger. And it's fascinating to me. But if your deal now is, I am stressed, I don't know how to handle this, I feel overwhelmed and anxiety, maybe having a stronger nerve responsible for your calmness would be a good thing to train. Most people have never heard of polyvagal theory or even the vagus nerve, but it turns out we now have technologies and techniques. One of the techniques that helps with the vagal nerve is you can do an ice bath. And most people say, oh, that's too much. That's kind of extreme. Okay, we do that at Upgrade Labs. But at home, and I teach this in the book, it's not supposed to be hard. You can stick your face in a bowl of ice water, like a salad bowl full of ice water, and icing the face before you go to bed for a minute, if you can do a minute. Most people can't when they first try. It radically affects the vagus nerve. And all of a sudden, then you sleep better and you're able to handle stress better.
I think I went down to minus 140 in your cryo chamber in LA. Yeah, that was interesting.
It's only cold air, though. Cold water is a little bit more shocking than cold air.
I bet.
Most people, okay, if I had shorts on, I walk outside and it's freezing. It's cold, but you can handle it. You just don't want to spend a half hour out there. But if you were to get into a really cold swimming pool, okay, that's big. So that's why you do just the face if you're getting started on it. And the idea here is I just want you to be better in the least possible amount of time. And for the first time in recorded history, we've been doing surveys for a long time as an industry of health, saying, what do people care about? And it's always, always, I want to lose weight. I want to lose weight. I want to lose weight. For the first time ever last year, the number one answer was, I want to deal with stress better. I'm so stressed that I care more about my stress than I do about how my pants fit. And the argument in Smarter, Not Harder is that those go together. So we can teach your body to handle stress better, and then it will make energy better and it will burn fat better. So at the same time you're getting thinner, you're becoming less stressed just because you learned how to send the signal into the body to get what you want. And you did it in very little time. Because honestly, wasting all your time at the gym will cause you to be stressed, because then you don't get to see your family, you don't get to do your job, you don't get to see your friends, you don't show up in the world. Every minute you spend at the gym that doesn't produce the best results possible, it's wasted time that could have gone into helping other people. And so I don't want anyone to waste time in the gym, and I don't want anyone to be unfit. So how do we maximize that so that, you know what? I did get my exercise in, and it works so well that I didn't need very much of it.
You mentioned that we should read under red light conditions. Why is that beneficial?
One of the surprising little spikes in demand from people is vision. A lot of people are reporting in the last couple of years that their vision feels like it's deteriorated. And well, there are studies that show that reading for 10 minutes under red light at night improves your vision. I've been doing this for more than 10 years, and my company True Light makes red light therapy devices, so I kind of have a good source for those. But I do this every night, and I have 20/15 vision. I just turned 27.7%. That's 50 years old in normal human years, but I'm planning to live a little bit longer than average. So I don't need readers. I can read the finest print my 13-year-old can read. I've been doing that. I also take supplements that support my eyes. You know, I do lots of healthy stuff. My mitochondria are happy. But it is possible. You can even train your vision. And it turns out one of the easiest things to do is that. And when you first try it, it's going to be hard. You just do it anyway. And you might read more slowly. And then over the course of a week or so, your eyes adjust and they actually are better the rest of the day. It's pretty amazing, actually.
Oh, I'm going to look into that. You mentioned something I was very taken by, and that had to do with the effect of the incredible amount of blue light that we're exposed to, but even in terms of our behavior. And I think you were saying when you go shopping, wear a hat and blue light blocking glasses, and cover your eyes, because you won't be as distracted and maybe won't be involved in impulse buying. I think that's, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's what I read into your
Yeah,
description.
it sounds completely crazy, almost like aluminum foil hat land, but bear with me. Your eyes have the hardest time seeing blue light because of its wavelength. In fact, some people theorize that we only recently as a species were even able to see that spectrum. So it creates a lot more stress on the eyes, and the eyes are an extension of the brain. So your brain gets stressed. And if you've ever noticed, especially after the sun goes down, you go into a big grocery store, there's incredibly intense bright white lights overhead. And when you do that, it takes a certain amount of the electrical energy in your brain that should go into deciding not to eat the Wheaties. And instead, it's bright and it's filtering out and dealing with the blue light. And when you put a hat on, which is just a baseball hat, anything like that, so it's not shining directly in your eyes, it lets your brain relax. And a relaxed brain makes good decisions. A stressed brain, whether you're stressed by noise in your environment, by junk light, a stressed brain makes worse decisions. This is invisible to us, but when we're relaxed and full of energy, we will think more and use more logic. And when we're stressed and distracted, even subliminally, we make shortcut decisions in order to make the best decision possible with the energy that we had available. So I'm just cutting down distractions that way, which lets you be calm and focused. Everyone knows that a candlelit, quiet, peaceful environment feels good for some reason. Well, if you went shopping that environment, you'd make better decisions, you'd spend less money and buy less junk food.
So we talked about that in Brainwash, the notion that You really have two areas of your brain involved in decision making. And when you are stressed, when you're exposed to blue light or an environment like the grocery store, you're pretty much locked into making decisions in a very impulsive way based on the amygdala's input, and that you really
Yes.
take the prefrontal cortex offline. The adult goes out of the room. You are making impulsive, self-serving decisions that are meant really for short-term gratification, and you end up buying the Wheaties. You're right.
I really like it because with all your training, you have the credentials and the knowledge to talk about this. And for a regular person, you go to the store, it just feels you go to the store. And when you just step back and you take a deep breath and you say, how does my body feel when I walk into that brightly lit store? You do not feel as good. And yeah, I'm the guy who's going to be there at the store, and I'm going to be wearing glasses. Mine block more than blue. My company is called True Dark, that makes glasses. Oh, we have a study that's coming out with UVic that shows that 15 minutes of blocking, it's actually 4 different spectrums of light, not just blue, but it puts the brain in a meditation state. So
Wow.
you can put those glasses on with or without a hat, but I wear the hat too because it works better. And then I go shopping and I just buy the good stuff. And I feel like myself when I'm out of the store. I don't feel stunned. And I always feel, and maybe I'm more sensitive than some people, but I always feel like when I go into a really brightly lit environment for a couple hours, especially, I'm kind of drained, and I want some sugar, right? And I don't normally want sugar. And this is the brain saying, I ran out of glucose. Like I'm tired, like give me something. So maybe we can turn our environmental stress down a little bit, and that cuts friction in our life. And that would be smarter, not harder.
I think the first time you and I met was in Las Vegas. And
Mm-hmm.
you talk about a place that does its very best to manipulate your behavior based upon what they're able to do to the environment. And that's, I think, where we had our first dinner together many, many
Yes.
years ago. And, you know, this is done with subjects undergoing functional MRI to play just that right music, the right frequency, the lighting as such to make you make decisions that are going to be favorable to whatever is the environment, whatever an outcome is wanted, to buy that product, to continue gambling, to stay up too late, all the things. I remember I gave a talk for Andrew Weil many, many years ago
Yeah.
in Las Vegas, and it was about lifestyle. It was about being in an environment that was conducive to sleep, and that you at the end of the day it would be quiet and allow you to relax. And I said, and let me get this right. I'm giving you this lecture today in Las Vegas, and it just really seemed a very odd juxtaposition. So smarter, not harder. I've only read the PDF, and I'm looking forward to getting the actual book. But thank you for writing it. It looks like it's going to be really great.
David, thanks for reading my book. It's an honor. You're a busy guy. You've written countless books. I read your books as well because there's always new knowledge and information in them. And there are a number of people who just continuously creating good new knowledge in the world. And I genuinely appreciate your work as well.
Well, great to see you, and I hope we can get together at some point in the future. Talk to you soon.
Talk to you soon.
Really interesting information as usual. Dave Asprey brings us really up-to-date information, really based upon, again, his experience of what has worked for him. But you can be sure that he vets a lot of information, a lot of technology, and comes up with some interesting information that we should all explore. I'm Dr. David Perlmutter. Thanks for joining me today on The Empowering Neurologist. I'll be back soon. Bye for now.